Welcome to Community Insight. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Coles. We back 2024, and I have my first guest on the broadcast in 2024. Happy New Year's, and we are coming in 2024. So, welcome to the broadcast. Please get your pen, paper ready in advance. You know how the ink goes out when you try to find that piece of paper and the ink doesn't work? Get ready because we have a good show again coming in with 2024. I want to introduce my guest on the show. His name is Mike. Mike, welcome to the
Thank
broadcast.
you. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Now, Mike, you got a whole lot to tell us, and we're going to try to get it all in,
All
Mike.
right.
So, is it? I'm calling it Joy Inn, but there's a name, and you're going to give us a history what you guys are doing because you're actually in Greenville, North
Yes, we
Carolina,
are.
in different location. So, for the audience, please share what exactly who you are, what you do, and give us the mission of it.
Okay. Yeah, we represent Enjoy thrift stores, and they were created for a purpose, and that purpose is kind of twofold. One, there's a large international deaf ministry that does Bible translation into sign languages, the heart language of the deaf, and then does leadership training, church planting with the deaf. And have worked in over 50 countries, trained 3,000 deaf leaders. My wife and I started that ministry in 1999. And when we were anticipating retiring about 6 years ago at the age of 70, we said we somehow want to continue to support the deaf ministry. And in my previous life, as we call it, I was the president of Goodwill Industries in southern Arizona. So I knew how to run thrift stores. And we said, well, what if we started thrift stores and use that funds to support the deaf ministry? We did a pilot one in Raleigh. It was right in the middle of a big church in a warehouse, and it went well, but it wasn't a reproducible model. And so we were driving one day in Rocky Mount, and we saw a vacant building, and just went in to see if there was anybody there. It just happened the property manager was there, and just happened that he was the moderator of the Baptist Association.
Wow.
And so
Don't even work, the Lord.
so the concept was that we would open these thrift stores, and we the management team from Enjoy would take all the responsibility for the lease, for the buying the truck, the fixtures, so that the local community-based charity would not have any risk, and it all was on us. They would have to pay that back over time, but only if they were profitable. So the first one in Rocky Mount is now 10 years old. We just had our celebration every year we have a celebration celebrating the volunteers and the staff and the contribution that they make. And that store has contributed over $2 million to Christian charity in the 10 years that it's been open.
Wow.
We actually have another store in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and another one in Tucson, Arizona. And collectively, they have done just shy of $4 million to Christian charity. So the way we set it up is we form a local board of directors, and we've just formed one here in Greenville. And that board of directors has the mandate that you need to give money to local Christian charities. So half of whatever profit we have goes to the deaf ministry, and the other half stays right here in Greenville at Christian ministries that are selected by that board of directors. The key to profit in a not-for-profit organization, because that's what it is. It's called Greenville Ministry Support, Inc., and it is doing business as Enjoy of Greenville, Enjoy Thrift of Greenville. But the real key, and here's where we need your audience participation, if you have volunteers and donations, thrift stores can make a profit. If you have to pay your entire staff or buy product or something, then it's not going to be there. So, like in Rocky Mount, we have 700 or 800 hours of volunteer time every month, and donations sometimes more than we know what to do with. But also, and on that note, I also want to say that we have an organization that we work with that's called Friendship, and anything that we can't sell, almost anything, there are a few things they can't take, but almost anything that we can't sell, all of the clothing, the books, shoes, purses, anything like that goes to them, and most of that ends up in Haiti or in Africa or somewhere or something like that. So we are trying to recycle everything that we possibly can and keep Greenville green.
Keep it great. Yeah, really spread the love. Like I'm listening to what you're mentioning. Like the key is you're working with the deaf, and that is such a great ministry to be working with. Sometimes people don't look on that. I mean, let me ask this question: what made you go directly into the deaf? Sometimes when we get into ministry, it's something that draws to it.
My wife and I say God did it to us. When the Soviet Union opened up, I was working with a hearing mission organization. And we had a small organization called the Alliance, and our goal was to put a church planting team in every one of the former 28 republics as fast as we could, because we didn't know how long the Soviet Union was going to remain open. And I would go when these teams, because they were blended teams from missionaries from 3 or 4 different organizations often. So I would go and do a week of team building and then a week to 10 days of training on church planter techniques. In Romania, one of the hearing couples there from the United States, well, I say hearing, he was hearing, she was deaf. And he interpreted my training on church planting to her. And unbeknownst to me, she contacted some deaf back in the United States and said, you need to get together with Mike Boos because he can teach people who've never been to Bible college or seminary, because nobody in the Soviet Union had, how to plant churches. And so when I got back from Romania, I had a call from an interpreter, and she asked if I would train deaf to be church planters. And I said, no. At that time, in addition to the Alliance, I was supervising missionaries in 28 different countries around the world. And it was just like, I can't take on another thing. They were very persistent and contacted me again. And I began to think a little bit about it, but it wasn't clear to me, why do the deaf need a church, or why do they need church planters? And shows you how little I know at that time about deafness. The third time they contacted me, my wife, who's the spiritually astute one, said, we're living in a house with a metal roof, and if you say no to God 3 times, I'm not sure I want to live under that roof with you. So called them back, and through the interpreter said, what do you want? And they said, we just want to meet with you. And so we drove from the Asheville area up to Indianapolis and met with 8 deaf people and 2 interpreters for a couple of days. And they started telling me things that I just had never thought of. First one is that there's 70 million deaf people in the world. Makes them one of the largest unreached people groups in the world if you put them all in one place. Problem is, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And so you have a village in Africa or India, maybe you have 1 deaf person in it. And so it's very difficult to figure out how to reach them. But some of the other things that they were telling us were no mission agency would accept them. They had applied at many different, one of them had applied at 26 different mission agencies. And they all said no, partly because of deafness, but also they hadn't been to Bible college or seminary. And most deaf have a fairly poor reading level. Because again, if you think about it, if you're born deaf and you've never heard a word,
right?
How long, if I was here speaking Russian, but you couldn't hear me, how long is it going to take you to read Russian? Yeah, so it's extremely difficult for deaf to gain reading skills. And then they started telling us that in addition to no mission agency, there was no denomination that was developing video like Sunday school class or Bible study materials in sign language. And the one that really got us, as the deaf would say, hit my heart. They asked me, so do you believe that all Christians have a spiritual gift? And I said, yeah, I believe that. And they said, well, they knew with the Alliance I'd probably gone to 100 churches in the United States and talked about the Soviet Union. Said, did you ever meet a deaf pastor, a deaf elder, a deaf deacon, an usher, a Sunday school teacher, a nursery worker? If we go to a hearing church long enough, eventually we'll end up with either a broom or a rake in our hand, because that's the only thing they can see for us to do. But in a deaf-led congregation, I can lead worship, I can preach, I can teach, I can pray, I can sing, I can do everything. The only problem I have is if a hearing person is there or hearing people are there. And that just made me think, well, yeah, and all deaf people that are what I call core deaf will tell you, I am not disabled. I have a different language than you do and a different culture. But when I'm with my people in my language and in my culture, I can do anything that you can do.
Mike, you just hit me on that because we could take so many things for granted, and I'm gonna say this is that there's a lot of churches I know do not have that the folks who's helping the deaf folks of I don't want to call them deaf. I got to change the name for those have that
Right.
issue. I'm gonna call
Right.
it just an issue.
Yeah.
To welcome them into the church or allow them because you could not set them on better. They have a gift that God gave them. Maybe let's use Stevie Wonder. Maybe he can't see, but he has a gift.
Yeah.
Or Ray Charles. And the same with them, and so it's like haven't been for so long that we just ignore that.
Right.
And the only church that's can afford that, they get it. But I know when it comes to the governor, they make sure they have someone there
Right.
helping them. But what about them giving the word?
Yeah, the problem with the Hearing Church is we want to bring deaf in the name of unity, but let me tell you a story. The deaf superintendent of all the schools in California, which is a big group of deaf schools, she one time was asked, "Why don't you go to church?" And she said, "Think about it. When I come to a hearing church, you take me down, put me in the front row. I can't see when people stand up. I can't hear the music. You usually have somebody up on the stage that maybe has 2 years of junior college American Sign Language and is butchering the language for me. And not to mention, I worked with one of the best interpreters in the world, an international interpreter, spoke 9 languages, could sign in 9 different sign languages. And she said, "Mike, when you preach, at best I can get 50% of it to the deaf because I have to wait to hear what you're going to say because the grammar is completely reversed in sign language. And by the time I wait to hear what you say and then I sign it to the deaf, you're already 2 sentences down the road." So what we tell people is the ideal situation is to get however many, 3, 4, 5 deaf people together and do this training that we offer. And we offer the Bible in their language, sign language, and then try to form a deaf believers group. Now, the best place to do that is in a hearing church room somewhere because the deaf don't have a room and they don't usually have money to rent a room. So our encouragement to hearing churches is try and affiliate with some deaf and help them through the training materials that DOOR is Deaf Opportunity Outreach. And so, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the Bible translation too, because that's another thing that when we started, we were just doing church planner training and we were doing it. We did 50 countries in 7 years and trained 302 deaf people. But what they had to do is they had to memorize 110 Bible stories chronologically, starting with creation and then going through the establishment of the church. And they did it, and they would be tested on those stories, and they'd had to tell them accurately. They had to develop a drama to go with the story, a song to go with the story, and know the application point.
Wow.
So then we would send them back to their country, usually teams of 4 or 5 people go back to Hungary or Romania or Slovakia or Peru. And we did that for about 7 years. And then we got money to do a follow-up study. And we weren't able to go to all the countries. They couldn't communicate with us. They didn't have computers. And at that time, we didn't have Zoom and all those good things. So we had to go. And we found that where we had trained them, they had planted a church, and sometimes 2, but it wasn't reproducing. And when we tried to figure out why, it became one of those duh moments. So I tell you the story, and you tell Mike over there the story, and then Mike tells it to his wife, and his wife tells it to somebody, a woman in their Bible study. By that time, Jesus and Joshua are fighting the Battle of Babylon, or you're playing the telephone game with the Bible. So we said, well, that's not what we wanted to do. So we went to Wycliffe, which is the biggest Bible translation organization in the world, and they did some basic training with us on Bible translation principles. And we built a $3 million center in Kenya and a $1 million center in India, put in video studios and all the latest computers and television screens and all of that kind of thing. But we also very quickly learned that, and Wycliffe basically after a little while said, we can't help you anymore because we do written, you're doing visual. And in almost every Bible story, there's something that's not in the written word that you have to translate. For example, I can be a lot of people, but I can be can and I can be able just by where I'm looking. So when we read Cain killed Abel, The Bible doesn't tell us how he did that.
It did.
So, but in sign language, Cain has to kill Abel. And so we have to come up with something that is plausible. I said he shot him, and that ruled me out as a Bible translation consultant. So, but the deaf basically came up with there was blood involved, so more than likely he hit him with a rock or possibly a log, not a carved club or something like that. But we run into that in almost every Bible story where there's something visual that for the deaf is something that's close by. We're just going to sign that it's nearby. But if it's far, we're going to open our mouth and lean more forward. So about 40% of sign language is what you do with your body, your mouth, your direction, and that kind of thing. So if we're standing at the well and looking at, with the Samaritan woman looking out at Jerusalem, the deaf are going to want to know what direction is it and how far is it, so I can sign it properly. So we run into that all the time.
Listen, you just took me way beyond which I was expecting, Mike. And I'm going to tell you, I never looked at it that direction.
Most people, including myself, when I first met him, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it never came towards my mindset. And so, the Enjoy Thrift Shop is about helping door. Also, you mentioned that, which is also giving back to Christians. And as you was talking, I got a lot more out of you. Actually, you must have wrote a book. He must have wrote a book, and the book came in my mind. Was planning a church, and I'm just bringing that up in spirit.
Right.
So, did you write a book?
No, I didn't. But people keep telling me
you must got to be coming up next. Because and you're coming in Greenville. You're already, and that's right over by Lowe's in Winterville.
Right. Yep. Right
there.
Memorial Drive, right next door to
the Food
Line, and just in front of Lowe's.
Right in front of Lowe's.
And it's pretty well getting there, but we need more donations, especially children's clothing and books and shoes and wares. We take almost anything. We can't take any box springs or mattresses because the state won't let us resell bedding, and we don't take any large like refrigerators and stoves, and we can't take any gas-powered anything that in the store that has gas in it, right? So insurance company doesn't like that. But other than that, we can electronics and shoes and purses and belts and wares and household decoration items, and it's a great store, and we call it upscale. You'll be amazed when you see it. It's a really nice thrift store.
I'll be stopping by there next week because I got to drop a paper off. I have another question on. We need volunteers, Mike, can we get volunteers that had to do like we have them in ECU or Pitt Community College? They got to do the service community type of for the reports, and
the majority of our volunteers are what I call white caps.
Okay,
they're people,
someone will be consistent.
They're looking for something they want to do with purpose and with meaning and make a contribution, and also get out of the house and create friendships. And like in Rocky Mount, we have the Thursday morning women and the Tuesday morning women, and they have a competition to see who can put out the most clothes.
Oh man!
But they also get together. We start every morning with prayer.
Awesome.
And they pray for customers. They'll pray, as a group, they pray for each other. And so I tell people that if you enjoy yard sales or flea markets or anything like that, you love working at Enjoy.
Let me share a story this morning. I got a call from a pastor, Pastor Charles, from Pantiga. He called me and he went to the store. He said, yeah, I went to that store there, and you got to meet this guy here. I think he's from Hawaii, whatever, but it was just, I said, yeah, I got to stop there soon. And he just was speaking about the spirit. And he went there, and that's the first time he called me this year, by the way. So, tell me that.
I'm glad we spurred that.
And so I do want to share that he mentioned that to me this morning. I said, it's crazy because I'm having a meeting with one of the gentlemen who actually runs these, and that's who he is. And I didn't give him your name. But it's just a blessing to know that you and your wife, you're allowed to see the ministry of God moving us. Yeah. We could say to ourselves where we don't have a plan. It's all God's plan. Yeah. And all his ministries and what he wants us to do. Right. And there's so many people doing ministry, but make sure you're doing it for the right reason. And something like this is a big cause. No one thought about that. I never thought about it. I never thought about people who deaf, who dealing with it. I got to change that name, not the word deaf. I hate that word right now. Mm-hmm. Those who can't really hear that well, that we left them out.
Yep.
They're discriminating.
We really are basically taking their heart language away from them when we try to teach them through interpreters or through just the voice. And when we give them the Bible, I mean, we've seen literally tens of thousands of deaf come to faith as a result of the Door ministry around the world. Because, like I said, we've worked in a lot of different countries and trained 3,000 people to go out and plant churches, and in addition to the Bible translation. So when the deaf have an opportunity, that's why we call it Deaf Opportunity Outreach, to learn the Bible in their own language, they are hungry, and it goes fast.
Mike, let me ask you a question. I mean, because we're running kind of out of time. I need the website. I mean, how do we get in contact with you guys? That's the first thing.
Door would be doorinternational.org.
Okay.
So, and Enjoy is just Enjoy Thrift. If you type Enjoy Thrift, the website URL will pop up.
Then the second, is there any events taking place that the community needs to know?
We're shooting for a grand opening on February 2, which is a Friday. And even right now, we're trying to put together some stuff in the back room, because on Friday, a lot of stuff goes out on the floor. So on Saturday, early in the morning, the staff and volunteers come in and try to restock for Saturday. So it's an exciting time. There'll be a lot of people in the parking lot.
Okay, so February 2nd, we're looking for that. And the last part, do you do any trainings? Is there any training? Somebody want to know more? Would you be able to do a presentation at a church or any place? Is somebody able to do that? Just give more information.
Yes, we our manager there, which is another God story that we don't have time for. It just came from Hawaii, but had a lot of thrift store experience with the Salvation Army. And David and his wife Lisa are both available to come to church or to a small group, or men's group, women's group, or whatever, and talk about what we do.
Mike, I want to thank you for being on the broadcast. Again, you have heard it here. Enjoy Thrift Shop is here in Winterville. They have an event on February the 2nd. Please support, donate money, donate stuff that you know that you could donate. If you need to go in the garbage, please take it to the dumps. Please donate what you can. It's for a good cause. God bless you, and I see you at our next broadcast.